Good morning, fourth graders. Today we're on page 229 of your student journal, page 229. And our objective today is, today I will add fractions with different denominators. I just fit it. So today I will add fractions with different denominators. So we have added fractions before, but this is our new part today with different denominators. Okay, so let's look at our vocabulary, and it's going to kind of remind us about our last lesson, as it says equivalent fractions. Different fractions that represent the same value. And when they say different, they mean they look different. So 7/10 looks different than 70/100, but they put an equal sign because they're actually equal in value. So if we look here at this grid, they divided this into 10 vertical sections and shaded in 7. This is a 10ths grid, but then in the 100ths grid, it was divided into 100 sections and they shaded in 70. But if we look closely, they're both worth the same value. It's the same amount. So we call those equivalent fractions. Okay, and then it says convert is to change form without changing value. So we learned this in our last lesson about these tenths and hundreds, that we should be able to change them pretty easily. So let's do some practice ones here. So if I said 2/10 equals how many hundredths? Well, 2/10, then we can use this to help us, or we could even flip back to our last lesson, 7-2, to help us. But 2/10 is the same value as 20 hundredths. I want you to notice how just these 100 zeros have been added to the end. So what do you think about 5/10? 5/10 would be equal to how many hundredths? And hopefully you're thinking 50. And again, they look the same, but we've added these zeros to the end. Okay, so that's what we're going to need to know today for our lesson. Okay, let's look at our steps. It says check the denominators. You can't add fractions unless they have the same denominator. So when it says check the denominators, we need them to be the same. So we might put that there. We're checking to see if they're the same. That's what's important, okay? And then it says, if needed, convert to common denominators. Common means same. And then we add the fractions. And remember, when we add fractions, we only add numerators. Okay, so I'm going to get started on my problem, friends. Here is my first problem. And it says 2/10 plus 44 hundredths equals. Okay, step one is I'm going to check the denominators. I have a 10 and a 100. That's not possible. I can't add them with different denominators. So I need to convert them to make them be the same or be common. Well, what do I know about 2/10? Isn't 2/10 the same as 20 hundredths? Can't I just add a 0 to the numerator and denominator? I can, as long as I add it to both. So I can change 2/10 to 20 hundredths and leave 44 hundredths. Now I have the same denominator. So what I just did was step 2. I converted this so that I would have the same denominator. Now I can add. And remember, when I add, I only add my numerators. So I have 20 plus 44 is 64, and my denominators stay the same. So my sum, or my answer, is 64 hundredths. Okay, let's look at my next one. It says 5 hundredths plus 4/10 equals. Okay, so again, step 1 says check my denominators, and they're different. I can't have different denominators. That's not allowed. So I know that I can change the 4/10. So I'm going to leave the 5 hundredths and I'm going to change the 4/10 by adding a 0 to the end of each. So I'm going to change it to 40 hundredths. So I checked that they were different, and then I chose to convert that one. It's easier usually to convert the 10 to 100. Now I'm ready for step 3, which means I just add my numerators. So 5 plus 40 is 45, and my denominator stays the same. Okay, and they want me to prove my answer on a number line, or I'm sorry, using a grid or number line. I think I'll prove it on this. So I'll do the largest first, 40 hundredths. So 40 hundredths would be 10, 20, 30, 40. But look at what else I could have done with that. I also could have looked at these as tens. I could have also maybe just saw them as, like, say they had just cut this thing into tens instead of hundreds. Like if I just look at the red lines, I'm going to redraw this so we can see the red only and not the black. So doesn't that also show you that 4/10, if I cut this whole thing into tenths, 4/10 is the same as 40 hundredths. So I just wanted to point that out. So I have 4/10 or 40 hundredths plus 5 hundredths. And that's how I got the 45 hundredths. Okay, let's try some of these together. We're on page 230. And here's our first problem. And it says 6/10 plus 23 hundredths equals. Okay, so step 1, we check and we go, those aren't the same. So we can't do that. So we have to convert this. Well, what do I know about 6/10? I know 6/10 is the same as 60 hundredths, because I can add this 0 to the numerator and the denominator, and it doesn't change it. So it was 6/10, and as long as I add 1 to both. Now, you can't do that with any other number, friends. I don't want you to think you could add a 5 or an 8. You can only add the 100. This only works for 0. I'm sorry, you can only add the 0. This only works for zeros. Okay. Plus 23 hundredths. So now we did step 1 by checking. We did step 2 by converting. And now we're ready for step 3, which is adding. So what is 60 plus 23? 83 hundredths is our answer. Okay, and the reason I can convert this is because 6/10 and 60 hundredths has the same value. And we saw that in the last lesson with the number line, remember? Okay, let's look at our next one. 7/10 plus 9 hundredths. Okay, so I see they have different denominators, but what do I know? I know 7/10 is the same as 70 hundredths. I know those have the same value. Plus 9 hundredths equals 79 hundredths, because we added those. Okay, I think on this one I want to do it a little different. So let's put a 0 here and a 1 here. I want to remind us about the last lesson, how we did these. I'm going to write in a pen right now, friends. I still want you to write with me, but it's too hard for the thick marker. So I'm going to look at these large dashes, and I want you to see that that's 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, 5/10, 6/10, 7/10, 8/10, 9/10, and I just want to remind us of our last lesson because we have to prove our answer anyways. Okay, but that was using the big dashes. If I use